Hi everyone, we're online. I don't have a voice, so I'm giving over to Nicole today.
I'm Nicole from Superdot Studio in Basel, and I'm your host today. Like you heard, Darjan has no voice. So, welcome to the 32nd edition of On Data and Design. Um, Darjan is here with me. He will do all the technical setup in the background. So, tonight's topic is history of information design, and I'm very happy to welcome three amazing guests. We have Paul Kahn, Michael Stoll, and Attila Bátorfy. These folks are doing an incredible work, and I can't wait to hear from them. Each speaker will have about 20 minutes for their talk. Feel free to submit your questions on Slido. You will find the link below this video on YouTube. The three speakers will answer your questions after all the three talks. And one more thing. I don't know if you are aware, but On Data and Design opened a new networking and collaborating membership. We meet with the collaborating members to talk about industry challenges and create industry standards for information design. Your financial support makes our work possible. So thank you for that. If you want to join, go to ondataanddesign.com/membership. And thank you for your support and being with us here virtually today. So let us know from where you're watching. You can add that in the chat on YouTube. And now, Paul, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So, stage is mine. And I'm going to talk about history of information design. So my name's Paul Kahn. I'm a recent immigrant to Normandy. I have papers, so I'm allowed to be here. And I've been teaching information design for about 10 years. And I came up with this question a few years ago, which was, why don't we teach history of information design through books? Sort of a different approach. And my concept of information design is that it's a range of visual techniques that support the flow of verbal and visual content information between people across different periods of time. And generally we divide and describe it by themes such as maps and timelines, structures like trees, circles, time periods, this is medieval, this is 19th century, or even cultures, saying this is European culture, this is Islamic culture, Asian culture. And we generally use really interesting examples like this Tabula Rogeriana map of representation of Europe, or the plan de Turgot, which is this amazing map of Paris. Non-Western examples like the Yankton winter count, or something that we're all immediately familiar with, such as the London Underground map from the 1930s, or even some of these amazing examples that Attila has been pointing out and reproducing on his blog, like this data visualization of all of the coffee being imported into Germany in the 1930s. I propose that we teach other skills and concepts as well. Seeing information design in the context of books, and particularly books that demand a very strong visual program. And when we do this, we'll be able to understand more about book arts, about reproduction techniques, about design systems. And in particular, what I've been interested in is a class of books that I call books that visualize the world. These have a set of common attributes. They generally respond to a very strong cultural need to visualize the entire world, either some royal command or a big commercial goal or some personal need. They generally rely on multiple information design strategies. You can't do this with a single strategy. They employ the finest production methods for combining images and text. And that means that the reproduction technology of the time is what you're seeing. Generally, they have to create some kind of a coherent design system from this complexity, and they combine past and current sources.
Paul, the
Yes.
slides are gone. Can you restart them again? Sorry. Yeah. It worked really good. No worries.
Yeah,
no worries.
I know. I touched something and it disappeared. And then it came.
Yeah, no worries.
All right, let's start again.
That happens. Not the problem. Here we go.
We're back.
No, it's the other screen. It's this full screen. For everyone, thank you that you are sharing with us your location. It's amazing. We see people from all over the world. My voice is really horrible. Okay, here we go. Paul, it works. Looks good.
Jesus. We're okay?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay.
Super.
Fine. So, talking about books that describe the world, they have these common attributes. They have coherent design systems. They often combine past and current sources, no matter what time period we're talking about. And they adapt these information to the available display options. You have to consider page size, spreads, the portability of the material, as well as the physical extensions that are possible at that time. So the 7 books that I've been working with are, the earliest one is the Tabula Rogeriana. This is a copied manuscript. The original is from sometime in the 12th century, but the copies that we work with now are copies that were done hundreds of years later. The Catalan Atlas, which is a unique manuscript that was done in Mallorca in the 14th century. The Nuremberg Atlas, which is printed from metal type and wood blocks, hand-colored. The Tushubian, which is also printed from wood blocks. This is an example of the woodblock book printing tradition that was already hundreds of years old in China at that time and continued for hundreds of years. The Atlas Historique, which was printed in Amsterdam from metal type and now copper plate engraving, which really changed things a lot, as well as hand coloring. And the Physikalische Atlas, Berghaus's book that was printed in Germany in the middle 19th century. This was printed from metal type and copper plate, but also lithography and hand coloring. And the World Geographic Atlas, Herbert Bayer's great book that was printed with metal type using multicolor offset lithography. And the relative size of the display, the page spreads, as you see here, is quite different in these books. It's not as though the oldest ones are the smallest, though you see the Tushubian at the bottom. The Chinese book format is actually the smallest display level. So I try to ask certain questions when I do this. What audience are these books designed for? What do the author and designer choose to represent, and what do they exclude? And what information design patterns do they use? How do they use circles? Where is time? Is there a past? Is there a future in this representation? How do they represent transmission of authority, lineage, and genealogy? What sort of transportation and trade, how the world is connected is being represented? And how the differences among people are represented? How do they classify the humanity of the world? And very interestingly, what is the center of the world in each one of these books? So the earliest one, the Book of Roger, the Tabula Rogeriana, is designed based on the assumption that the world is separated into 7 climates, and then each of those climates is described in 10 sections. This image that you see is the first image in the book, which is this representation of the world, Africa, Asia, and Europe. South is at the top here, so the Mediterranean Sea, the Black Sea, the Caspian are down at the bottom. The Indian Ocean is sort of in the middle, and then we have this world ocean surrounding the world. And the visual language is bodies of water are clearly separated with patterns of lines. Rivers are consistent lines. Mountains are small, intricate patterns. And then the towns are represented by small circles. These are 2 pages that both represent the Dalmatian coast from that book. The first one at the top is a copy made in 1300, and the one at the bottom is a copy made 150 years later. You can see how consistent the visual language was as this manuscript passed through centuries. The Catalan Atlas, which is, as I said, unique, begins with the Earth at the center, surrounded by the elements, the planets, astrological signs, lunar phases, and seasons in the corners, holding the world together.
I'm so sorry, Paul. We have to repeat it. So the repeat just kind of to bring back the slides. They're out for some reason. But, so the same procedure. The last slide was good.
I'm sorry, which slide was good?
Oh, we saw everything. I just interrupted you now then when the slides went off. Sorry for this. Yes. Yeah, and that was the last slide.
Okay. So this is the image of the Earth at the center of the universe from the Catalan Atlas, surrounded by elements, planets, and astrological signs. The representation of the Earth now includes very detailed list of all the coastal ports here along the Atlantic coast and individual towns. And we also see the rulers of Africa and Asia. When we come to the Nuremberg Chronicle, which is organized as a history from creation to the present, it begins, the text itself is organized by the 7 ages of the Judeo-Christian time concept at the time. And we see this abstract notion of the first 4 days of creation, very similar representation with the Earth in the center there. And when we come to questions of lineage, we have these very complex and interesting spreads using a vegetal metaphor connecting, in this case, Noah to the descendants of Noah. We also begin to see cities represented as though you were coming to that city. In this case, we see Venice. We also, in some of the details like this one's of Ravensburg, we see the information about the type of commerce that's going on, things being loaded on and off the boats in the Danube. In the Tushubian, the organization is divided into 3 parts: heaven, earth, and humanity. It begins with diagrams of creation, like this one, these of the history of the Taiji diagram. We also get the Liu Shuo diagram, which is begins as an inscription of a turtle emerging from the river and then turns into this abstract set of patterns that are related to the Book of Changes. We get some very interesting detailed diagrams of time. In this one, each of those concentric circles represents time units of hours, days, months, and seasons. We get a wide range of different types of maps. This map is a more abstract map of China with the major rivers and mountains. We also have much more detailed maps that require being broken across several different pages. In this case, this map requires 4 separate pages to get all the topographic and other information about the country. In the Atlas Historique, it's organized into 7 volumes. The very first one is organized around the history of the Greco-Roman history and all the kingdoms of Europe in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. There's a separate volume on Asia, a separate volume on Africa and the Americas, and a supplement. This combination of maps, charts, and diagrams. And when it comes to creation, we see multiple versions of where the Earth is in the universe. We see Ptolemy, but we also see Tycho Brahe, Copernicus, and the relative size of the planets. When it comes to the genealogies, because this is using copperplate, the prints themselves can be enormous. They're printed very large, much larger than the book, and then they're folded and bound into the book. And we can also get these very detailed maps that are, in fact, this one is 6 times the size of the book, and it combines both geographic information as well as illustrations from different travel books. So we look down at this part of South America, we see this detail of the port of Acapulco, people from Peru, and in the upper right, we see the one detail in the entire book where African slaves are represented working on sugar mills in the Caribbean. In the 19th century, Berghaus's book is divided up into separate sections of the specialties of science at the time. So we've got meteorology separate from hydrology, from geology. This example is from the meteorology. It shows the isothermic curves of the northern hemisphere based on work that it was inspired Berghaus by Alexander von Humboldt. And when we get to geography, he's able to show the outlines of all of the continents, and he can rotate the Earth. In this case, we see both the Antarctic and the Arctic as he separates the Earth into one sphere that is mostly land and the other sphere that is mostly water. He also is using the 19th century concept of race and nationality very strongly. This one is the representation of the races of the world. It's a very complex diagram with racial zones in the center, and then we lost it again.
Yeah, I think it's every 5 minutes. So let's have the last loop, then we're back. Let's take it with humor. I think it's something with timing, every 5 minutes, falling out. It's like timekeeping, every 5 minutes falling out. I can use the time for everyone else. If you have questions to Paul, please address them in Slido. There's the Slido link. And we can bring back the presentation from Paul right now. People say it's going really well. They love it, Paul. Yes, I will. Yep. Good. Yes. Okay. Last round, last quarter.
Yeah, last one. So the last book, this is the last. So the last book here is Herbert Bayer's World Geographic Atlas, which he subtitles A Composite of Man's Environment. And he begins that book with this Venn diagram. So he has a lot of similarities to the focus of the Berghaus book. He's combining geography and geology and climatology, but he's also including economics and demographics in his view of the entire world. He begins this book with similarly very scientific diagrams, this one on cosmogony, astronomy and geology, as well as this one on meteorology. So now we begin to see this combination of scientific diagrams, maps, and he works his way into the maps by first showing the world with the alignment of all of the different mountains below this unfolding of the globe, as well as the depths of the oceans, and then moves into individual continents such as North America, and then from there into individual countries and states. And he begins to use collage and color separation in a very modernist fashion, which has also influenced a lot of us. And he's using isotype, this system that was developed by Otto Neurath and Neurath's team in Vienna in the 1920s and 30s. And he's using this to show information about population and land area and immigration. And he also really focuses on the idea of impactful graphics, impactful data. So at the very end of the book, this last page of the book, he's trying to get across the idea that population, overpopulation is really the thing that is most dangerous at the end of the Second World War period. So I'm sorry that it didn't go so smoothly, but I'll end with a question that really comes into my mind as I'm doing this kind of work, which is how do we create the book that visualizes the world today in the 21st century? And I'll end with that. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Paul. That was really cool. Sorry for the technical issues, but someone in the chat wrote that maps want to be seen physically, so they refuse the streaming.
Okay.
So thank you again. So the stage is now for Michael Stoll.
Hello, everybody. Great that you were able to join, or are able to join. My name is Michael Stoll, and I'm teaching information design now for 20 years at Augsburg University of Applied Sciences in Bavaria, in Germany. And as you know, Bavaria, of course, is the best part of Germany. And beside this, I'm also collecting historical information graphics, as you can see from the setup behind me. And teaching is not limited to Augsburg alone. I'm also teaching in Switzerland, together with Nicole, by the way, in the certificate program of Bern University, but also in Lucerne in 2 courses. And these are illustration nonfiction on one hand, but also a very interesting course that is called Data Design and Art. And this program is wandering between applied data design and data art, with the goal of pushing the boundaries of visual representation in data visualization. And I think that's a very unique approach to the field. Sorry, and I really love to teach there. Today, I'm sharing pieces from my collection that visualize qualitative data. These visualizations try to answer questions like, what is it that is depicted? Questions about the inner life of objects, how things are put together and work together, and how they work at all. Very often, it is about showing complex relationships, but even more about making these relationships accessible and breaking them down in a way that they are not only understood, but also remembered and stick with you as an audience. So you can really sense that the didactic aspects of mediation are, on the author's side, a challenge in themselves. Not to mention the challenge of creating attention, fascination, and in the best way, immersion on the user side, and sustaining that over a long period of time. If you look at the history of information design, you'll find some truly remarkable examples. Being limited to 20 minutes alone, I will share some of the books that I have in my collection and like to share the fascination that these different approaches holding till today. So for you, I'm showing the original works using my overhead camera. And with this, I'm trying to share my screen with you. Just a second. And what you're going to see is a mess first. So I hope you can see that screen now. You're seeing my keyboard. I'm taking away that keyboard. I have some tools that I'm going to use later on. But first, the first book I'd like to share with you is from 1851. And it's an astronomical kind of atlas. It's a loose page collection by John Emsley, here in a German edition. And that was used in schools to educate pupils about astronomical facts. And if you look at that, there are a lot of nice single pages in it. And I would like to take out these three and tell you a bit why they are so fascinating and why they are so rarely available nowadays. They were used in schools to teach pupils, and back then, 1850 something, they only had candles in classroom, and they were needed, and I will show you why. So here you see a light table that I will illuminate. And if you look at these now, you see that these are transparent areas. And if I want to turn that page, and you can see the cutout pieces and the yellow transparent paper behind. So this is really fascinating. And the same applies to the moon that illuminates. Let me turn that off. You could show that without illumination and with illumination. So here again, the back side is covered with a yellow transparent paper, and it's printed on this side. And the third one, that is the size of the planets, same applies here. And you can see how pupils would be fascinated by holding this against a burning candle in their classroom. And you can also imagine how some of these sheets burned down immediately. So that was the first piece. And the second piece is from 1902 and shows you the human eye in break apart graphics. And the thing here is that you could open that, read a lot about the human eye, but the fascinating thing happens at the end of the book, where you could unfold a flap that holds a visualization of the eye. And with your own speed, with your own path, you could unfold it, this slide layer by layer, and I will do that for you. And you think, oh, maybe I can imagine how that goes, but it's really complicated and multi-layered. So look at that. So, and that's why I need the tools here. And this goes step by step, and you can backfold this part. And even some parts are made of transparent paper. You can see me moving my tool underneath. So that was transparent paper over here. And if we pull apart or aside the muscles of the eyeball, it goes on and on and on. And it is really interesting to immerse in this type of visualization that could keep you entertained hours by hours. And, you know, I forgot how to put it back together. And this happened to many of these copies where people then simply pulled it together somehow and then said, oh yeah, that will fit. and then they would close it. So this was the second one. And while this book tries to resemble a layer by layer breaking apart of the human eye, the next example that I would like to show you takes a slightly different approach. This is a book about new animal cure methods from 1923, which is a rather regular handbook with regular illustrations in it. But now and then you have flap inlays like this. And I'd like to share the cow with you because I love cows. They're very common in Bavaria and also in Switzerland, by the way. And the interesting thing here is that you can have also these flaps that you can pull aside. But in opposite to the book about the eye that I showed earlier, this takes a different approach because the areas are sorted topic-wise. So on the left side, it's all about the bones, and this about the veins and the blood circle. And if I would move that to the right, this is all about the muscles on the right side. And after I pulled away these two flaps, it still goes on and on through the inner organs of the cow. Oh, I flipped two at once. Look. Here and here and on and on. And I think this is really fascinating, an immersive approach. And the important thing is that you are able to learn at a speed that you really like and that supports the understanding of these complicated animals. But then there's another book where they took that approach one step further. And it is this publication from 1901 called Steam and Electricity at the Beginning of the 20th Century by Walter Henschel Clermont. And this publication, of course, breathes Art Deco at large. And it has a supplementary booklet with a lot of text in it and some diagrams. And it has what you know, of course, flaps to flap away. So this is how that engine would work. But on one page, and I marked it with a white piece of paper here, they took it one step further. It's not only to show the different parts of this steam engine, but they try to mimic the mechanical operation of this. And if you look closely, you can see that arrow pointing up here. And if I move this, and I will do that in a second, you will see how the piston will go in and out and in and out. So watch closely as I move this. Oh, maybe I have to do it with my hand here. This is all made of paper, and this piston is running in paper rails. So it's not only that layer thing that you know already, but it's to mimic the work of the piston. I think this helps really understanding this machine. Well, around the 1930s, things got worse, also in Germany, but all over the world. And the money was not available to carry on with this type of thing. So people tried to look up different approaches to showing layered objects. And I would like to share with you a brochure that was, and I have to admit that, in one of the darkest times of Germany during the Third Reich. And that is also why I'm covering the swastika here. This is an advertising brochure that will advertise the new Volkswagen Beetle. And it's printed in a very special way, and I'd like to show you how that is. And as you can see from the reflections here, it is printed on cellophane foils or paper, or if you want to. And you could go through and dismantle this Volkswagen layer by layer. And the interesting thing of cars is that it reveals the 5 people sitting in that car. But you can see while I'm turning the page that it's front and back printed, while it is still transparent at some point. So let's turn that to the next. And you may wonder what this is. It looks like the chassis, the metal parts of the car. But when I turn that one more time, you will see the really interesting approach. And some of the viewers know that probably because I showed it many times. So this is a bird's eye view from top onto that car. And if I turn the page, you see what happens on the other side. That's, well, a frog's view onto the car at the same time, using the same printed area as the other side. And I think that is really fantastic for that time. And so I could go through page by page until in the end, the car would be in a complete view from underneath. So this is something I could do for days and days to skim through this brochure, because this is really an outstanding approach to show the bird's perspective and the frog's perspective, if you want. Well, and then that way of showing stuff to people declined more and more. But my last piece I'd like to share with you is one from the 1970s that was used, I have to unpack it, that was used in combination with overhead projectors. They projected something on a screen in a classroom. So this actually is a model, and I will turn on my background again, so maybe not that much, maybe like this, yes. And the interesting thing here is, or maybe I'll start with the lights off. What you can see is a handle, and I will turn that handle in a second. But what you also, or maybe hardly see, is a set of gears of transparent acrylic in the background. And this will disappear as soon as I would turn on the light. And then I can turn that handle, and it would show a kind of an early interactive animation of how the cylinder of a diesel engine would work. This is really fascinating, and it's not the topic of today, but these historic books inspire me and my students. And to pick up the question of Paul Kahn from the earlier talk, I think this could be a basis to write the book of the 21st century. So with this, I would like to thank you for your attention. But last but not least, you might want to take out your smartphones and scan this QR code that will lead you to a booklet that I pulled together from my collection with 2 short texts about the collection, and maybe you're interested to download it. It's a PDF and it's a direct link to the PDF. So thank you very much. And I don't want to say goodbye without inviting you to Augsburg for any reason, of course, but foremost for visiting my collection, seeing my collection, and visiting me. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Michael. These books were really amazing. And as someone mentioned correctly in the chat, these are like analog interactions, right?
Absolutely. Yes, I absolutely would agree. Analog interactions, no need for power or anything else, but highly fragile and still immersive to me.
So thank you very much again. We will come back to that
Thank you.
after all the 3 talks. And now, Attila, the stage is yours.
I'm sorry, I'm just focusing on Mikael's collection because I already downloaded the QR code and I'm speechless. So thank you, Mikael, to show us. And thank you very much for having me. My name is Attila. I'm coming from Hungary, Budapest, and I'm trying to share with you my screen. Yeah. Okay, just tell me if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen? Mm-hmm.
Yes, all good.
Okay, thank you.
Go.
Okay, thank you very much. So today I'm going to talk about Cabinet of Infographic Curiosities, which is my love project, which I launched last year, September. Just a couple of words about myself, because I'm really sure that most of you don't know anything about me. I'm a data visualization practitioner, a former data journalist. If you are interested in my previous work, you can find me online. I'm also head of a visual journalism project called Atlo, which we run with my partner Christian. And as I told you, I have a background in journalism. So this is where I started to do data visualizations. And from the beginning, I was very interested also in the theoretical background of data visualization and also the history of that. So at one point, I decided that I go back to academia, and my thesis was about the history of information graphics in Hungary and visual communication of data in Hungary. And in the beginning, I had an observation by autopsy that comparing with the Western production and the Western examples, the Hungarian production and quality was quite poor and low. But I couldn't be more wrong, because after a couple of years of research, I can tell you that the Hungarian history is rich and innovative, also creative, with beautiful examples of data visualization and information graphics. But that's for sure. If we can put out that there was a golden age of information graphics, as Michael Friendly put out during his researches, the Hungarian golden age was 20, 30, or even 50 years later, between the 2 world wars. And obviously, during the research, what I did, it gave me the opportunity to reflect on our history of information graphics, our common history. Because these remarks are quite general. I'm really sure that you already heard them several times, millions of times. But this was my final remarks also, that the research up to date or until today was quite Western centric, and it followed the Western narrative. Obviously, it's not surprising, and if we have time to discuss about it, we can go further about this problem. I found that the concept, how we talk about or how we narrate our history, is cyclical, dialectical. It's a little bit oldish type of narrating our history. I also agreed with Robert Kossara that we use the same images to tell the same story all the time. And I have a question: that what is the criteria of importance? Excuse me.
We have the same issue probably with like Paul.
The same issue with, okay.
Yeah. So
thank you.
You lost your screen.
But you could hear me, right?
Yes. Yeah. We can hear you. Just a second ago, the presentation is lost.
Okay.
Here we go.
So.
Good.
And I had also these questions: that what is the criteria of importance, how we narrate, or what are the points we try to tell this story. The first, what is the impact, the name, the grandmasters. We try to build up this narrative about the grandmasters like Minard or Preifer, or beauty or aesthetic eloquence. So these were my questions after or during my PhD. And last year, in late summer, I decided to launch this cabinet of infographic curiosities. By several reasons. I had a couple of reasons. I already had a collection. I started to download from archives around the world. I hope that you can see. And I accumulated hundreds of, at least for me, very interesting information graphics and data visualization. So that was that. Okay, what can I do with those information graphics? Let's start to talk about or write about them. The second was that I already had a couple of publications on Nightingale, the Journal of Data Visualization Society, but only about the Hungarian history. I also was very highly inspired by R.G. Andrews' Chartography. We also had a joint publication about, and as far as I know, it was quite popular, when fascist chart, and I really liked it. And at last, not least, during my research in the couple of last years, I received extreme amount of support from RG, Jason Forrest, Paul, Michael Friendly, and also Alberto Cairo. So that was the basis or the background why I decided to launch Cabinet of Infographic Curiosities. So, and this is what it is. This is how the opening page of that. And the basic, I mean, the idea is quite basic: discovering and presenting unknown, lesser known, and rare data graphics, cartograms, visualizations, and also visualization ideas from all around the world. Now, I would be very happy, and let's see if we can figure out or manage it, that when I talk about all around the world, less from the Western world. So I would like to widening the body of examples from from different continents, not only from the Western world. I also try to publish and write methodological articles, how to find, how to search, how to collect these. Obviously, we are talking about digital examples here and not physical examples. And I already conducted a couple of interviews with researchers and collectors. So for me, it's very important to understand and learn from their perspectives. So Paul and Michael, please be prepared to my questions in the near future. So right now, this is the geographic distribution of the articles or the examples, data graphics, cartograms of what I already published. As you can see, almost entire Asia is still empty, and entire Africa is empty. This is piety. I'm really sorry about it. And if we will have time, I'm going to tell you the reasons why. I mean, it's not difficult to figure out. So there are a couple of results or examples of the already published articles and findings or discoveries. So on the cabinet of Infographic Curiosities, you can find a couple of presumably first findings, like the equal square tile map here from Hungary, which is a quite famous and infamous example, but also what could be the inspiration behind that, or this fantastic map here. I mean, this spherical Ständiger method here. Again, you lost. Sorry.
Today something is not going well.
No problem.
Thank you. Here we go.
So this rarity here. Thank you. Oh, this is one of my favorites, the unusable first handbook on data visualization here, which is a German language one. So these are unique and okay, if we stick ourselves to this concept that, okay, let's try to find the first ones, I think they are quite good examples and rarities. But also I try to focus on small ideas, small steps, where this is what I find interesting. There's a small logic on putting together different units of which is quite similar to the isotypes logic, or again a very, very small idea here, the legend of a map on an entire page. So so this is all for now. I also have some plans, and in the next few weeks you will find or you can read a couple of new things, but I will keep them as a surprise. So I won't show you right now the things, but I also have a longer shot plans for the future. First and foremost, I would like to digitize my private collection here. What you can see which was started a couple of years ago, but for some reason, I mean, it was very slow. So let's relaunch this year. I would like to publish also longer essays, reflections on our history, some maybe polemic ones, polemic essays on. And I would like to opening up cabinet of infographic curiosities. So I wouldn't imagine it as a one-man show. So if someone would like to cooperate with me, or just publish their findings, I will be more than happy to open up Cabinet of Infographic Curiosities as a joint publication for everyone. Don't think in big, just publishing something new, something rare, something interesting from our history. And I also have some issues and remarks. Again, we won't have time to discuss, but again, after spending extreme amount of times to dig in archives in Asia, Africa, South America, Eastern Europe, Russia, this devasternization, colonialism, revesternization concepts, which also reached our narrative. It would be great if we could think about at least these concepts and these criticisms of our history. This is just a remark to myself that unfortunately, for some reason, I couldn't find, and believe me that I spent not hours, but of half a year to dig in digital archives, women creators. It would be very important, but unfortunately I couldn't find anyone. I also would like to pinpoint or point out that there is a big difference in level of digitization, availability, and accessibility. And again, poorer countries, if we think about and I'll just refer back that why I didn't find anything from Africa or Central Asia, for instance, that simply those. Okay, everyone. Okay, I lost everyone here.
We see you. We see you.
Okay.
It's just the presentation which is gone.
Okay, just one more minute and
1 more minute. Good.
1 more minute. Yeah. So
it's back.
So yeah. So if you wonder why I didn't find anything from Africa, Central Africa or Central Asia or Latin America, or why I could find only a couple of things, that this is related to accessibility and the level of digitization too. I think that we need more local and regional research projects. I wouldn't think that it should be a standalone or again a one-man show. So we might put together maybe a regional research project for Central Eastern Europe, and just refer back to Paul's book, or even how Michal presented his works, his collection. I'm really sure that we need different narratives, not this just we have a timeline with images, but also comparative or juxtaposing the different examples from different cultures. So maybe need to tell our story in a different way. But I can see very good examples right now as Paul's or Michal. So we are in a good track, I think. So that was all. Thank you very much. stop sharing my screen and let's give the floor to the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Attila, and sorry again for the technical issues.
No
I
worries.
really like your approach of analyzing the historical graphics more. I think that's what you all have in common. And then to the questions. I mean, we have quite a lot of questions, and of course, people ask them to one of the speakers, but I think in general, every speaker can answer these questions, and I would love to have a discussion under you three. We have different topics. Maybe I start with a rather big question and heavy question. It was addressed to Paul. He says, amazing presentations. Georgia says that. What is the historic relation between visualization and power? I mean, you also addressed this question before, Attila. That's why I thought I start with that. And it goes to Paul, but I think everyone is invited to reply to that and add your thoughts.
Well, the word power can mean many different things. I'll guess from the context that you're using, or you're asking the question of power in terms of political power over the power over the majority of people within that culture. And I think that it is clear that the type of books that I was looking at are books that require enormous amount of time and resources. And so generally large amounts of time and resources come from whatever the power is that's controlling the country. On the other hand, some of these books were really done as personal projects. Now, like Attila, maybe after 15 years, he will have put together so many things that he'll publish something that 100 years from now, you wonder how could someone have done something like that. So sometimes it's directly related to power. Sometimes it's a kind of royal command or large commercial effort. Right? The Nuremberg Chronicle was essentially funded by the wealthiest people in Nuremberg to publicize the fact that Nuremberg was the center of the world. That was, as I understand it, part of their motivation for doing that. So there's certainly a relationship. It also is true, I think, that whoever has the ability to create these visualizations potentially can attract support from people in power, or they can be used to make people understand things that they might not otherwise understand. That's the best I can give you at the moment.
Thank you for this other sort of Attila and Michael.
I mean, related to the power question. Go ahead, Michael, please.
All right. Maybe you want to go first.
This is the very question what Lauren Klein's Data by Design tries to analyze, right? If I'm not wrong. So I'm really sure that this is the question: how, who has the ability or the opportunity to visualize things, and what kind of world those visualization create around us, using Playfair. I mean, challenging Playfair because you can see as the Playfair's inventions as just some sort of visual inventions, but on the other hand, I mean, this is how capitalism is depicted, right? So, and if you see the slave shape graphic, for instance, so I think that there is something with what we should research more, and how power elites are related to visualization. So if you want to give a glimpse about it, so I recommend you visit Data by Design by Lauren Klein, who will publish her book, I think in November or something next November. So, but online, this is an online project. So Data by Design is the project, Digital Humanities Project's name.
All right, so let me add to that question. And of course, it's a question that is very open. And I would say that visualizations hold a certain power to people of certain things. So from that, there arises a huge responsibility for those who are planning, preparing, and printing and distributing visualizations. And I read through the comments, and I want to make one more remark here. I'm collecting historical books, atlases, and objects because I was never satisfied by just finding reproductions online, because they were without context. So having the whole book at hand will give you a lot of insight into the context it was published in and probably also was used. And I'm stressing this at the beginning of the age of AI, where I think, still need these printed permanent elements as references to decide what is true or what is not true. So I think this is something that is also very important to notice. And visualizations give power, they take power, and within democratic countries, you find totally different visualizations than with totalitarian countries that use information graphics visualizations to fuel their power. And so a worldwide network of researchers is needed to have a back argument and to make sure that these visualizations are interpreted the right way. And Attila, you mentioned colonialization, for example. And if you go into that field, of course, you will find a lot of visualizations that kind of coin roles of people and so on. But also with rather well-known pieces like the World Geographic Atlas by Herbert. If you look at the visualizations in there, it's easy to find a Western hemispheric-centric view of the world. And but still, I think the scientific exchange helps to define the role of visualizations. My take.
Thank you very much. Yeah, speaking about like research and analyzing, we had quite a few questions about what can we learn from these historic visualizations that we can, learn from it for today, for the present.
Well, my answer to that very good question is that what makes impactful information design, data visualization being one form of information design, is understanding how information is transferred from an image to the person who's looking at it. And all of the current, the technique and the technology that we have for creating these images changes over time. but there's a tremendous amount to be learned from looking at images that were designed in a very effective way that communicated to people in completely different time periods, completely different cultures. It will teach you something today. It will, at that point where you as a designer has to take this information and try and understand, how do I make this understandable to people? The more you see of examples from different time periods and different cultures, I think the better you will be as a creative person.
Yeah. Do you want to add something to that, Attila or Michael?
I have a different answer to this. My advice to my students used to be that don't see these information graphics and visualizations as visual artifacts, but see them as problem solving or a communication form, right? Because or some pieces of creative answer to some problem. And for me, this is not a standalone history, because it's related to history of ideas, history of scientific thought, history of philosophy too, or history of Christianity also. So you can't take out from the culture these artifacts, these visual artifacts, because they speak a word about when they were created. So they are embedded in our culture. So these are visual, on one hand, investigations, visual inquiries to something, but also creative answers and creative communication too. Obviously, I haven't answered the original question, I know, but this is what I learned from that. These are not just visualizations; they are so much more.
Yeah, I would like to add to this. The question was, what could we learn today from these historic examples? And I think it makes sense to think about the process, how these visualizations were produced. And in opposite to what we see today, back then, the process of production, more or less, was a one-way road. So at every stage of the production process and the planning before, of course, things had to be right. So you couldn't publish a thing online back then, of course, and then say, oh, there's a typo in it. Let's fix it quickly. No, it was printed and it was in the market. And this is something where you might think, oh yeah, well, I don't care. But the thing is, having this process, this one-way process at hand, what did it mean to the authors? And it meant that they had to slow down, had to think through every little detail of what they did. And this kind of focus added to the quality of the final piece a lot. It was not easy, it was costly. You needed sponsors to come up with a visualization. And in Switzerland, there are some examples, for example, from the 17th, 18th century, where scientific books were sponsored by the church. So this is something, because there were questions who financed these books. And so in the early times, I think it was a Bible. I don't know how the Bible, I forgot the name. And so the church sponsored the publication of scientific outcome, and that was a revolution back then. But to come back to the point, the authors needed to focus deeply on what they did, because there was no way to remove typos after things went to print.
Yes, you're right. There were quite some questions also about their production. On the one hand, how were these books? I mean, we saw in all the examples, we saw some books that are like take a lot of effort and a lot of detailed knowledge to produce them, and probably also a lot of time and money. That's on the one side to produce them, but on the other hand, there is people who have to buy them, right? So the questions were also, were these books like affordable back then when like manual labor was maybe, I don't know, cheaper, or was it to own a book like that, was it something like really exclusive and expensive and only a few people had access to this kind of information at all?
Well, that's certainly one of the big one of the big differences in several of the cultural traditions that I was looking at, and I'm certainly not looking at all cultural traditions, but when you look at the books that were being circulated in the manuscript tradition, and then you also realize that the manuscript tradition continued to be the way in which books were reproduced and distributed in much of the Islamic world well into the 17th and 18th century. And then you look at the way things were being distributed in the Chinese Empire and in Japan, where there were some very inexpensive forms of printing. I mean, books were, I don't want to say books were cheap, but they were not extraordinary and rare. It was possible to print books in a relatively inexpensive way. So yes, the number of copies of things are very different in different places. I'm not speaking about cost because I can't start figuring out how to turn that into cost, but it certainly had a big impact on how aware we are of the kinds of information that was being designed and reproduced in books in many parts of the world. And that's certainly one of the reasons why we're much more aware of things that were being published in Western Europe than in any other place, because they're simply more accessible to most of us who are doing the work. They have been digitized, right, as Attila is finding. And there's many, many things that have not been digitized, or I don't live near a major library at the moment, right? And I'm not part of it. I'm not part of an institution that gives me access to enormous amounts of material, and so that has a big impact. But in terms of cost, the truth is today that while you have to pay to be on the internet, you have to pay to have a computer, there is a gigantic amount of information that has been digitized and that you can have access to from the little farmhouse that you're living in, like this one, right? And that really changes the current state of cost for these types of things, right? I mean, Michael and Attila are collecting. I mean, collecting books is still a big effort, right? As Michael knows. And very important to have the collections of the books, but it is certainly much less expensive for those of us who are trying to learn and understand these things because of the wonderful work that's been done in digital libraries around the world. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. I also heard, Paul, that you're publishing a book soon. Is that right?
Yeah, so if I'd been a little better at my presentation, that would have been clear. The examples that I was showing are from a book that it'll be published sometime in the spring, called Mapping Knowledge Across Time, and that's being published by CRC Press. So it's been a few years of hard work, and I'm very, very happy that it's going to be able to share it with everyone. Thank you.
Nice. So looking forward. Yes, Michael.
Yeah, I would like to add to the question about the price tag of these historic books when they were produced. And I have two thoughts here. And the first thought is regarding the flap books that I showed. The interesting thing is there was a printer in Bavaria who produced these complete sets of flaps, and they were sold to publishers for them to include it and glue it into works. So this was one way to bring down the costs a bit. And on the other hand, some of the most precious pieces were never meant to go to the market, to be sold to people, like the World Geographic Atlas, for example, or an inauguration for Queen Elizabeth I, her route through London, for example. And so also several countries in the world from the beginning of the 20th century till 1960 or 70, 80, produced so-called country atlases. They were commissioned by the country itself and were given away as gifts to visitors from other countries. And the Atlas of Czechoslovakia, for example, is such an example. And also the American, I think it's called the American National Atlas, that came out in 72 for the last time. That was also such a piece that never meant to go to the market and to be sold to regular people, except probably to libraries or collectors.
Yes, so you mentioned already, and that was also a question, that it is possible actually to visit your collection and to visit you, right? So it's still it's still more fascinating to see these works, of course, also in original form. And maybe one last question to wrap it up is like, why did you start at all to collect historical visualizations? And maybe you can add, if you want, which one is your favorite and why?
Well,
I'm not going first on this one. You go.
All right, good. There were several things, of course, and several points in time when I look back. But the first actually was when my grandmother had to move to a home to elderly people. He pulled me to her board and said, "Oh, Michael, to remember me, why don't you choose one of my books that I have?" And, you know, I was a kid back then, and of course, what would I choose? The biggest book on the shelf. And that was an historic atlas of the world. And the interesting find in that atlas from 1800 something was when I looked at the map of the South Pole, and there it was written, "Undiscovered Territory." I was so amazed. Such a huge book. There was still something. And then in the future, many of my colleagues, like John Grimwaite, for example, Alberto Cairo and others, encouraged me to look into the history of information design. And so they gave me hints what to collect. And also my former professor, Bernd Janke, whom I greet here, he's now in his 80s and he's still calling me and telling me what he collected and why I don't have it. And so we email fight going back and forth here, which I really like. And my students, of course, like the collection as well, because it inspires them to build up on these, but in modern forms.
Well, if I may to continue, so in the beginning, my intention wasn't to build a collection, but it was a necessity because there were a couple of things which were already digitized, but in very shitty quality. So that's why I needed them in their real physical form. or they weren't digitized at all. But when you start to feel the taste, they're having the first and the second and the third one, then you can't stop. I mean, I couldn't stop myself, so I spent my kids' Harvard for collecting these Hungarian things. But it's important that because I collect only Hungarian things, I don't collect things or international for things from abroad. So
No
but
competition with Michael then.
yeah, and it's not only about visualization and information graphics, but also about handbooks, old handbooks. So everything related to visualizations.
So I'll just say I don't collect visualizations. Physical. I'm not a book collector. I have far too many books in my house, but it's not because it's not because I have a particular line of things that I want to make sure I have the first editions or the rare books. I do have gigabytes of copies of things on my hard disk, and frankly, the origin of this is that I began to work with my late partner Christoph Lenk, who was a great designer from Poland, and then came to the United States and taught for many years at Rhode Island School of Design. And we started a business together, and I learned everything that I know about graphic design from working with him. And he was a great collector of 35 millimeter slides of examples from all over the world. And we used to do these 2 slide carousel shows where you had like 2 slides, one was fading in, one was fading out. And Christoph was a master at walking right through the walls of differences between cultures and art history and graphic design and all the different disciplines that you're not supposed to cross if you're a serious academic. He would just walk right through these walls, and I began to see the relationship between different types of graphic design from the 20th century and different periods of painting from different times of different places in Europe. And I began to see how the perspective in painting in Chinese related to the way you could lay out things on the computer screen. So I started from there, and then when I had the opportunity, thanks to Dietmar Oppenhuber and to other colleagues at Northeastern, to teach at this still a very wonderful master's program at Northeastern in information design and data visualization, I was given 2 weeks notice that they wanted me to teach this class because the professor who was teaching it had just left and would I like to teach a course on the history of information design. And so I said yes. And I just started collecting as many examples as I could and tried to stay ahead of these very intelligent students by urging them to show me examples that they were aware of. And so I learned a great deal from the examples that they brought. But, the collecting, certainly, I value tremendously the artifacts that we're talking about, the actual books and prints. But you can learn a great deal and collect a great deal from the digitized artifacts. And well, I have had great time at the Library of Congress in Washington and at Bibliothèque Nationale in France, in Paris, and Harvard Library. You can't rely on this too much. You really do need to collect through the available network that we have so far. So far, it's all available.
Thank you very much. So we should go on collecting. And for me personally, I always love to see the original because then you can also see the size. Because when you see something on the screen digitally, and then sometimes I'm really surprised that a graphic is much bigger or much smaller than I expected.
Smaller, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just smaller than you could expect or you could imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really insightful, and thank you very much. And sorry again for the technical issues. Yeah, thank you everyone for watching. See you next time. Yeah, have a nice evening. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Buy Paul's book. It's wonderful. Okay?
Thank you, Attila.
Thank you.